On the distant orbital station called Varela 5, people from many planets worked together. Some came to trade, some came to learn, and some just wanted a quiet life far from the noise of war. Among them was a human engineer named Eli Grant. He was not famous, not rich, and not powerful. But everyone who worked with him said the same thing. If something was broken, Eli would fix it, and he would never ask for anything in return. He lived a simple life, fixing ships, helping travelers, and keeping to himself. One day, a royal ship arrived at the docking bay. Its silver hull shone like a mirror, marked with the golden crest of the Tsar Ren Empire, one of the most powerful alien kingdoms in the nearby systems. Word spread quickly that Princess Lyra herself was on board. She was only 19, but already known for her pride, beauty, and temper. She spoke her mind freely, and no one dared to speak back. When her ship's energy core failed, the royal engineers sent an urgent request for help. None of their own mechanics could repair it in time. The station commander called Eli. "We need your help on the royal ship," he said. "Be careful, the princess is watching." Eli nodded and picked up his tool case. He walked calmly into the ship's engine room. Inside, the royal guards stood in perfect lines, their armor polished and their faces hard. The air smelled of metal and perfume. The princess herself stood in front of the control console, wearing a deep blue gown made of shimmering material that changed color in the light. Her eyes were sharp and bright, her silver hair tied neatly behind her. Eli bowed slightly. "I'm here to fix your ship, Your Highness." Lyra looked at him from head to toe, her expression unreadable. "You're a human?" she asked, her voice cold. "Yes," Eli said simply, already scanning the damaged circuits. She frowned. "How primitive. My people call your kind the survivors of a death world. How did someone like you end up fixing royal technology?" The guard smirked behind her, waiting to see the human's reaction. But Eli didn't answer. He just knelt beside the core, removed the damaged cables, and replaced them with precision. His calmness seemed to irritate her even more. "Do you not have a tongue?" she asked sharply. "Or are humans trained to stay silent before their betters?" Eli didn't look up. "I'm trained to do the job right," he said softly. "That's all that matters." His quiet tone cut through the tension. The princess blinked, surprised that he had not shouted or bowed deeper. When he finished, he stood up, wiped his hands on his sleeve, and said, "Your ship will run now. Just don't push the reactor past 40% for the next few hours." Then, without waiting for praise or pay, he turned and started walking away. Lyra's face reddened, not from anger but from confusion. No one ever turned their back on her. No one ever walked away without permission. She opened her mouth to call him back, but the words died in her throat. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. When her ship departed, she couldn't stop thinking about that quiet human. His hands were steady, his voice calm, his eyes clear. There had been no fear, no flattery, no hate, and just focus. She told herself it didn't matter. He was just a mechanic, but something about him stayed in her mind like a song she couldn't forget. Hours later, while the ship was in flight, the warning lights blinked again. One of the pilots gasped. "The stabilizers are misaligned." Lyra rushed to the control room. The officers checked the system, only to discover that the human's repair had already corrected the deeper fault. A hidden crack in the reactor plate that could have caused an explosion. His quiet fix had saved them all. The crew exchanged glances, realizing the man she had insulted had saved their lives. Lyra sat in silence. She remembered his words, "That's all that matters." For the first time, she felt a strange weight in her chest, not anger, but shame. When the ship reached the next station, she ordered a shuttle back to Varela 5. Her guards were puzzled. "Your Highness, why return there?" "I have something to correct," she said simply. But when she arrived, Eli was gone. The station workers said he had taken a supply mission to the frozen moon of Thalos 7. He often volunteered for the hardest jobs, they explained. Lyra stood in the hangar, looking at the empty dock where his small ship had once been. The silence of the place felt heavier than before. She realized she had never met someone like him, someone who didn't care about rank or titles. He hadn't tried to please her or prove himself. He had simply done what was right and left. That kind of strength was unfamiliar to her. Among royals, everything was about appearance, reputation, and power. But that man's strength came from something deeper, something peaceful. As her shuttle departed, she looked out the window at the stars. The galaxy suddenly felt larger than ever. She thought of the human who had walked away without a word, leaving her with lessons she had never asked for. That night, in her private quarters, she couldn't sleep. She replayed the scene again and again, the sound of tools, the calm in his voice the moment he walked away. Each time her pride felt smaller. She whispered to herself, "Why did he not answer me? Why didn't he fight back?" The next day, she sent a message to the Human Council on the station, asking for his records. All she found was a short line: Eli Grant, engineer, Earthborn, service record clean, volunteers for outer route missions. Nothing else. No family, no rank, no home address. The royal advisors told her to forget it. "He is just a mechanic," Princess one said. "Your duties lie elsewhere." But Lyra shook her head. "He may be a mechanic, but he has more control than any royal I've met." From that moment, her attitude toward humans began to shift. When others mocked them in her court, she stayed silent. When a new human envoy arrived, she treated them with respect. Deep inside, she still carried the memory of that quiet engineer, the man who had shown her that true strength doesn't always need to speak. Far away, on the icy moon of Thalos 7, Eli worked under a pale sky filled with moving clouds. He didn't know that the princess had come looking for him. He didn't care for royal politics or titles. He just continued his work, fixing broken machines and helping stranded miners survive the cold. Yet sometimes when he looked at the stars, he remembered the young royal with silver hair and proud eyes. He remembered how she looked when he walked away. He didn't hate her. He just hoped she learned something from that day. That kindness and silence could sometimes teach more than words. Back on the royal ship, Lyra sat near her window, watching the same stars. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I insulted him and he just walked away, and I can't stop thinking about it." The universe was vast, full of endless planets and voices, but in her heart the calm voice of one human still echoed, reminding her that humility was a rare gift, and that sometimes the most powerful act was simply to walk away. Days passed after the princess returned to her empire, but her mind was never quiet. She could not stop thinking about the human engineer who had helped her without anger, pride, or greed. Every time she looked at her reflection, she remembered how small her own pride had looked beside his calm silence. She wanted to meet him again, not to command him this time, but to understand him. Yet her duties grew heavier, and her advisors warned her not to waste royal time on a common worker. Still, one evening she found herself staring at the star charts. The frozen moon Thalos 7 lay far from the royal lanes, a lonely and dangerous world known for violent storms and deep ice valleys. She had heard he had gone there on a supply run. Something inside her pushed her to go. Perhaps it was guilt. Perhaps it was curiosity. Or maybe it was respect, something she had never felt for anyone her age. 2 days later, her ship entered the Thalos system. But before she could land, the sensors began to flash red. "Stormfront detected," the pilot shouted. "Magnetic field unstable." The shuttle shook violently as lightning crossed the clouds. Before anyone could react, a strong blast hit the ship, throwing it off balance. They crashed hard on the surface of the frozen moon. The impact knocked everyone down. The guards tried to move, but the cold wind howled through the broken hull. Communication was dead. The engines hissed, releasing smoke. The temperature dropped quickly. The princess felt her fingers numb and panic filled her chest. "Signal for help," she ordered, but the officer shook his head. "The antenna is gone, Your Highness." For the first time, Lyra felt real fear. There were no palaces here, no guards to protect her from the cold. The white landscape outside stretched endlessly, filled with snow and silence. Hours passed. The storm grew worse. Just when she began to lose hope, a loud clang echoed from outside the hatch. The door groaned open and a figure appeared, wearing a frost-covered jacket and carrying a portable heater on his back. It was Eli. He looked like a ghost in the storm, his face covered with frost, his eyes steady and calm. Without a word, he stepped inside, placed the heater down, and began checking the crew. He lifted one injured guard over his shoulder and helped the others stand. When his eyes met Lyra's, she froze. "You," she began, her voice shaking. "Talk later," he said quietly. "You'll freeze if you stay here." He led them out into the storm, guiding them through the white wasteland with a small locator light. Lyra stumbled several times, but every time she fell, Eli pulled her up without complaint. He walked ahead, breaking the snowpath for them, his movements strong but calm. After what felt like hours, they reached an old mining shelter. Eli forced the door open, started a fire with chemical packs, and checked everyone's pulse. The princess sat near the heater, watching the steam rise from her gloves. The silence between them was heavy, but not cold. Finally, she said softly, "You saved us again." Eli shrugged. "You were in trouble." "You knew who I was," she said. "Yes. And after what I said to you before, you still came?" He looked at her for a moment. "You needed help." "That's reason enough." Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not with disrespect, not with flattery, just honesty. She looked at his hands covered with small cuts and bruises. "You could have ignored the distress call," she whispered. "I could have," he said. "But I wouldn't." She smiled weakly. "You humans really are strange." He gave a small grin. "Maybe, but we do what we think is right." The wind howled outside, shaking the metal walls, but inside the shelter it was warm and quiet. The guards rested, and for a while only the sound of the heater filled the room. Lyra looked at him again. There was something in his eyes that she couldn't explain. A peace that didn't come from rank or training, but from understanding himself. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. Eli didn't answer. He was busy fixing a damaged transmitter. She went on, her voice softer. "When I insulted you, I thought you were weak because you stayed silent. Now I see that silence can be stronger than pride." Eli adjusted the dials, then looked at her. "It's not strength," he said. "It's choice. You can choose not to fight. You can choose to walk away." His words sank deep into her heart. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her teachers or generals. She watched him work, realizing that real leadership was not about power, but about patience. When morning came, the storm had passed. A rescue beacon flickered weakly from the transmitter Eli had repaired. Soon a royal fleet arrived, finding the princess alive and the crew safe. As they prepared to leave, Lyra turned to him. "Come with me," she said. "The palace needs engineers like you. You will have respect, comfort, anything you ask." Eli shook his head. "I'm fine where I am. There's always something to fix out here." She looked down, disappointed but understanding. "You really are different." He smiled gently. "We all are, Your Highness. That's what makes the galaxy interesting." Before she could reply, the rescue team guided her aboard the ship. As the shuttle lifted off, she pressed her hand against the window. Below, the small human stood alone in the snow, looking up, then turning back to his work. Back on her home planet, Lyra stood before her council. When the ministers asked what she learned from the accident, she surprised them all. "I learned that power means nothing without humility," she said. "And that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply walks away." Her words spread across the empire, repeated in schools, news reports, and royal speeches. Slowly, the Zaran Empire changed its treatment of humans, offering them equal work and protection. The change began not with an army or a treaty, but with a simple act of kindness. As for Eli, he continued his quiet life among the outer colonies. He never sought fame, and he never mentioned the princess again. But sometimes when travelers arrived from the Zaran Empire, they spoke of a young royal who reformed her world after meeting a humble engineer. Eli would only smile and say, "That's good to hear." Years later, when Lyra looked at the stars from her palace balcony, she often wondered where he was. She had met many heroes since that day, but none like him. He had shown her a truth that could not be taught by books or battles, that the greatest strength lies in kindness, and that walking away with dignity can sometimes change a heart more than any victory. "Some nights," she whispered into the wind. "Thank you, human." Far across the stars on another quiet station, a man named Eli paused for a moment while repairing an old generator. He looked toward the night sky and smiled without knowing why. Somewhere, light years away, a young woman's heart still carried the memory of a man who never asked for anything, never fought for glory, and never bowed to pride. And in that silent space between them, a single truth remained, that humanity's quiet spirit could move even the proudest hearts in the galaxy.